Welcome in to the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard A. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good evening.
It is Monday, June 24th, 2024. Go to follow us on youtube.com. So I still haven't gotten that. I like a
the cha-cha.
do the cha-cha.
I like
still
a
haven't gotten the
do
smooth transition. Don't
the
follow us
cha-cha.
on Twitter. Go to we're on Blue Sky. I'm probably not going to post a whole lot there, but you can go to Blue Sky. Go to youtube.com/thegamingdiscourse. That's the main place to go, and patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server. There's more stuff coming down the pike, and there are other things that we're working on as well.
There's things of things.
To other things of content to publish and stuff like that. Anyway, we have a ton of quotes to get to today. Shawn Layden, every time he talks, he's just like...
He's dropping
He's like, let me just set the industry straight real quick.
Let me tell you why they don't want me here anymore.
We need to... All right, and this is serious, because there are people that I want to talk to. Like Matt, like I legitimately would like to talk to Matt Piscatella one day, but Shawn Layden is one of those guys that it does feel like they kicked me out of the industry because I was too radical.
Yeah, probably.
Like, I was saying our game should be shorter. They kicked me out. They didn't want me there anymore.
What happened to fun, guys?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, Shawn Layden said a bunch of stuff. Miyazaki, is that how you pronounce it correct?
Yes, from Elden Ring.
Yeah, he had some interesting stuff to say, and then old Matt Booty from Xbox, president of Xbox.
He definitely has it. Everyone disliked that.
Yes, he had some things to say as well, and we'll get to all that. We'll begin with what games we've been playing. Connor, have you been playing anything recently?
I have been playing a lot of Scramble Battle of Britain.
Oh, nice.
Ooh,
the
nice.
Demo? You've just been eating the demo? Yeah?
Yeah, just playing the demo.
Okay.
Doing a lot of the instant action. That surprisingly fun. I didn't expect it to be that fun. You described it perfectly as a virtual version of the board game or the tabletop game X-Wing and all those other similar games like that. But no, it is very fun, and I have spent too much time in the demo playing it.
Yeah, I can't wait for the game to release. I read up on it a little bit, and it seemed like they were gonna have like I don't know. I don't want to say exactly what, because I read up on it really quickly. But every pilot has a name in the game, so I wonder if it's not going to be something kind of like XCOM, where you have like your airfield or your base, and you have pilots that you can recruit, and then when you go on missions, if you lose that pilot's gone.
Right.
So, and that would kind of mirror what the Battle of Britain was like, because the Battle of Britain was this huge, desperate defense of England, and you had just this train of new recruits coming in that would hop into a Spitfire and have to go out and fight, because there was just not enough time to get to get advanced training and stuff like that going.
Sounds like Gundam.
Yeah. So it's a really cool, it's a really interesting premise, and also like when you have to attack bombers and stuff, because in the demo you just fight other fighters and Stukas, but once you're fighting bombers, that adds a whole nother dimension. So yeah, I'm really excited to see, and it doesn't have a release date right now, so it's probably maybe like next year, maybe even the year after. But it's definitely one of those games that I'm like, had no idea, tried the demo, and suddenly became one of my most anticipated games.
Very cool.
On my Steam wish list. Richard.
One
Connor.
tiny detail that I absolutely love about the game is if you zoom into the planes themselves, the pilots' names are like painted on to the side of the cockpits.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and if they have a nickname, which it won't show up on like their names, it'll be on the if they have a call sign or a nickname, it'll be on their plane.
Oh, cool. Okay, I never noticed that. I'll have to take a look.
It looks like you got to take another run at that demo.
Yeah, Richard.
I played and beat Crow Country.
Nice.
Country
Okay.
played it on my Steam Deck, and I do like the game. I kind of have this, like, maybe I had taken too much of the like hype of the game when it came out. I took it to heart, and so I kind of came out feeling I don't want to say disappointed in the game, but there are things about the game that that kind of docked points off for me, and although still it's a really good game, I'm not sure if I would consider it's like one of the best games of the year. But it's kind of like it's a survival horror game. But the way I likened it is, what if Twin Peaks had creatures?
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. Like the game was a lot more sillier than I expected. And I think two of the biggest issues that are pros and cons is the gameplay style, which is isometric. So you're looking at it, from a above angle. And it plays like Resident Evil, which is good and bad. Because in the original Resident Evils, when you would aim at a zombie, you only had 3 directions. You had high, mid, and low. But in Crow Country, you have free aim wherever you want.
Oh, interesting. With that isometric camera.
But with the isometric camera.
Oh, okay.
So that causes you to, if you have the camera turned, let's say, like if I had the camera turned over there and I aim, the camera's going to like snap around and kind of disorient. And then you're going to have to kind of like overshoot, undershoot to figure out where your reticule is on the floor or the enemy, and then shoot them from there. Once you like aim at them, it's like, oh, I know where I am now, and it's fine. But it is a little like some of them move very fast, so it's kind of more of a panic. Like
things can get pretty clunky.
Get very clunky, yeah. Especially when you've played enough Resident Evils to know that when you pull up your gun, you hold L2 or whatnot, and then you usually press X to shoot and circle to reload. It's reversed.
Oh, wow.
You shoot with circle and you press A to reload. And so I am sitting here panicking, and you press X and it's that's like a plus and negative to it. The second plus and negative to it is its art style, which is low poly PS1 style. The character models are really fun, and they kind of look like Duplo characters, like Lego Duplo people. But because of the like low poly style they have going on, depending on how fast you can move through a level, you can miss a lot of things either on the floor or things you can look at or read.
Okay.
And the biggest thing is traps. There's a lot of traps, but they're kind of, I'm not going to use the word redundant. I'm going to use the, if you're moving too fast, they're a little cheap. Because there's like bulbs on the floor that if you run over, you get poisoned. It like explodes and you get poisoned. And there are little like crow heads that are part of the amusement park that if you run past them, they'll like turn to you and like spit out poison at you. But a lot of the locations are claustrophobic. So it is kind of like you get hit by them a lot, basically. So, and sure, I can admit that maybe some of it was my fault because I'm just running through. But sometimes when you are trying to be careful, they'll constantly activate. They won't just activate once and that's it. No, they'll activate like every time you pass it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, oh, all right, fine. But it was short. It was kind of short and sweet. The puzzles are really good. It kind of makes you have to pay attention to all of the documents that you get and or all the notes that people leave behind.
Nice.
And yeah, I was able to beat it in a little under 5 hours, but it was a good game. I just it's not like 10 out of 10. It's probably like 7.5, 8 out of 10 for me.
Okay. What are you planning on? So what's your strategy? What's your attack plan for Baldur's Gate 3?
We'll see June 27th.
That's really specific. That's in
Steam summer sale.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was gonna say
we'll see what happens.
Okay. You're like, I just picked that date just to see. Okay. I'm interested. No, yeah. I have been playing a little bit more Baldur's Gate 3. I'm interested because I keep thinking back
What's that?
on I keep thinking back on things that I really disliked first time around, and it's even though I have the difficulty turned up this time, my familiarity with the spells and the classes, along with knowing like what I'm going to run into, has made the game way easier. Part of the difficulty in Baldur's Gate 3 is the first time you go through it is learning everything, and also a lot of the time you're fighting enemies for the first time. So you have to learn their abilities, you have to learn their skill sets and stuff, and oftentimes it's just that one fight where you're gonna run into them. Or bosses have really powerful moves, and so when you fight them a second time, you're more ready for them. I defeated a boss just earlier yesterday that was one of the tougher bosses in the game, but I loaded for bear. I knew exactly how to prepare for this boss, and it was way easier the second time around, even though I'm playing on a harder difficulty, just because I was more prepared. And because the monk can just stun people.
do what they want.
The monk just runs up, stun. All of a sudden, 2 enemies skip their turn. It's kind of ridiculous with the monk. But yeah, and it's funny because I said this a while ago, but when I was playing when I played as a sorcerer in my first playthrough, I remember thinking, I don't know how people can get through this without playing as the sorcerer, because I'm using all these spells. Yeah. And now I'm playing as a monk, and I'm like, I don't know how I could do this without playing as a monk, because I'm like all these spells and all these abilities. So it's like it does a really good job making, I think, all the classes powerful. Some classes definitely more powerful than others. I think I still don't have like warlocks and barbarians. I haven't messed with the ranger at all or the bard, but warlocks and barbarians still feel like I think I don't know, maybe their abilities just don't. Their abilities are more useful in combat that goes on longer, or when survivability matters more. Something that is easier a second time around is your spells in your spell slots, they only recharge on a long rest. And to long rest, correct, you have to use 40 camp supplies, right?
Oh man.
So you have to find, food and stuff around. So you loot everything, open every box, take every apple, every cabbage you find, every carrot, and then that goes into your camp supplies. Well, this time, because I'm collecting everything, I don't have to worry about long resting, because I have 1,000 camp supplies, so it's totally fine. First time through, I wasn't sure, so it was I wasn't constantly collecting camp supplies, but so that's made the game easier, because now if I'm in a battle, first time through I'm in a battle, and I'm like, well, if I use this spell, it's going to take up my spell slot, then I'm going to have to long rest. Do I want to use the 40 camp supplies? But this time it's it's fine. It doesn't matter. I can long rest after every battle. And be refreshed. Totally fine. But the difficulty there is that there are boss fights and boss fights in sections that are elongated and more difficult, where you're really going to have to be careful about which spells you cast and stuff, because you won't get the opportunity to long rest. But yeah, one thing. So there's 2 things in the game. I think these are the things that I dislike the most about Baldur's Gate 3. One of them is the 2 major themes of Baldur's Gate 3 are transformation and power. In a lot of ways, it's very similar to the Lord of the Rings. There's that scene in Lord of the Rings where the council is debating what they should do with the ring, Yes. And Boromir says, why not use the weapon against its master, right? And that's Boromir's naivete, right? Because Boromir doesn't understand that the ring will corrupt you, it'll eventually kill you, and because it wants to get back to it. And that's the whole metaphor. That's the whole and that's the whole metaphor of power. Is it tempts you, you use it, you don't realize what you're getting into, and eventually you become corrupted and die and stuff. And it's bad. Baldur's Gate 3 is very similar. There are lots of items in the game that are very powerful, and you're constantly asked, do you want to tap into this power? Who should have it? Do you want to give this person this item that could make them super powerful? And I think the correct answer across the board is no, you should not do that, because ultimate power comes with ultimate consequences and responsibility that no mortal can possibly comprehend. So when each character, and this is woven into the main quest line, but also into individual companion quest lines. And so when you reach important moments in companion quest lines, one thing I'm not a huge fan of is you may have to convince a companion not to do something. And for that, you have to make a roll. And I really dislike that, because I feel like that character, if you've steered them a certain way, that character should have their own epiphany as a character, as a written character, correct? As opposed to the character is written a certain way and they reach a fork in the road and it's determined by a dice roll. I really dislike that.
That is weird. I mean, because the obvious answer is if you do their companion quest, like you're cultivating that relationship throughout the entire game. Such as Mass Effect is the other like example. You complete what they're going for, but in turn you get the reward,
their trust, and
yes,
yeah.
And so that seems basically counterintuitive. That it feels like ultimately everything else before that doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's just
because maybe maybe you have to roll a persuasion check and your character has really high charisma or whatever. So it's like, oh, this will be easy, and you just happen to roll a 1. And it's really annoying because it's just a complete relationships between sentient beings don't come down to a die roll. You know? It's like there's trust and emotion in there. So that's one thing about Baldur's Gate 3 I don't like. Another thing is that in Act 3 there is the companion doesn't die, but you will lose a companion, and it's really annoying because it's random. Yeah. And you don't have to go get this companion back right away. You can take your time, do other things. There's like artificial urgency, created. We have to go get them. Okay, and you could spend 10 hours doing whatever. But if you do that, what happens is if that companion is a companion you've used a lot, or maybe a companion you were romancing or whatever, all of a sudden you have to choose between completing a huge chunk of the game without getting that companion, or mainlining one of the main quest lines to get that companion back, so you can go back. It sets you to a mainline quest, so you can go back to exploring the game with all your companions there. Something I really, really, really dislike. It's a neat idea. It happened, and now to me, for the second time. The first time I didn't like it because I wanted to take my time, and it was like, okay, well now you have to do this thing. And I don't know. It's a design choice that I'm just not a fan of, and maybe I'm in the minority there. But it's not... Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish they would have figured out a different way to do it, to create that urgency without taking a character away and then leaving you to make some kind of decision on how to handle that kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, I've told you this before, I think, but when you play through Baldur's Gate 3, you really need to remember to bring companions on quests that they are associated with. Not just quests that are their quests specifically, okay. but if you, like, Gale is the wizard, right? So if you have a quest and the quest is like, there's a magical wizard statue over here, and you're like, oh, Gale might be interested in that because he's a wizard, right? So think about that context a lot, because there's a lot of alternate dialogue and stuff. Okay. And oftentimes those quests have little side things that if you are a wizard or you are the class that it is associated with, you'll be better equipped to deal with that, if that makes sense.
Are there specific rewards for those types of quests too?
Yeah, there are. Okay. But mainly the main thing is if you go on some of these quests without those companions, and for the most part it'll tell you because it's companion specific quests. But if you go on those quests without companions, you'll be losing out on like a massive chunk of storytelling. So the drawback is that, and I think one of the reasons they did it like that is because that you may not have picked up that companion. There all kinds of stuff can go wrong, so it may be easier just to enable it where you can complete it without the companion, but I don't really know if there's an upside for that. So I have a big chunk of Act 3 left to go. and then once I finish it, you can tell that Larian at some points, the game is so massive and unwieldy that you can tell Larian, I think, had trouble, but it was just like it was like they were holding they were Kevin's famous chili. They had a gigantic tub of chili.
Yeah.
And it's just, they spilled some of it, but that tub is so huge and so full that it's like, yeah, you spilled some over here, but I could understand why, because you've got this gigantic thing of chili you're carrying. So there's a little bit of that, but not to the point where it's bad or anything. But I do feel like if they took away some of the companions, or if they removed some of the side quests, they may have been able to iron out some of the storytelling in other areas. But instead, it's like there may be a little plot hole or something weird, but there's also this huge other side quest over here. And that went in, and I guess that was probably a decision they had to make. But I'm glad they made it, because Baldur's Gate 3 is really good. I went back and played Hellblade 2. I kind of lost interest in it because it wasn't vibing with me. Went back, played it a little bit more, and the story is like the same. And by story, I mean my opinion of it. The visuals are really good. The technical stuff is really impressive.
Right.
The acting is phenomenal. Melina Juergens is just out of nowhere
still great.
one of the best actors on the planet.
That's awesome too.
But like it's still very I don't know, combat goes on too long, it's not always super fun, looks amazing, but I just think maybe the priorities were in the wrong area, and combat is often just not, I don't know, a lot of the environments you walk through just aren't interesting. They're nice looking rocks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
As opposed to having interesting art. Like point at a spot on Elden Ring's map, teleport there, and there's something in the distance, a statue, an enemy, some geographic feature that blows your mind. It doesn't matter where you are. Because the whole thing was curated so that there's always interesting stuff for you to look at. Hellblade 2 is not like that. There are a lot of walk through this canyon, and it's a good looking canyon, but it is just a canyon.
That's a nice boulder.
Exactly. So I'm gonna finish it because I do enjoy it, and the story is really interesting. But I was interested because I saw some of the mixed reviews, and I think I'm landing on the more it's okay side of the reviews, as opposed to some of the reviews that were really, really glowing about Hellblade 2.
Right.
But I really can't emphasize enough how good like Melina Juergens is, and I don't understand how someone with no acting experience could just deliver a performance like this. Mm-hmm. It's insane. And there's other actors in the game as well, and they do a great job. But yeah, like her screams when she attacks are shivering. Senua goes through moments of abject like anger and aggression, and then it rubber bands back to insecurity and sadness, and it's all on her face the whole time. I don't know how she does it, don't know where she came from, but it's like the Doomslayer. Someone opened up a coffin somewhere, and Melina Juergens was like, I'm here to act and be incredible. And people were like, okay. But anyway, okay, is there anything else we would like to talk about before we get on to news?
I just want to real quick touch on your dislikes for Baldur's Gate 3.
Bring it on. Just kidding.
I was just going to say that specifically for your dislike of the companion being pulled away, I can 100% see behind the screen and the DM just like, I need them to be on the fucking plot. Just come over here and do this fucking thing.
If it were a D&D session, I might agree with you, but it's a video game, damn it. It's a video game.
But it's giving you the experience of being at the tabletop.
Oh, okay, I get you. Okay. In that case, there should be companions gone, and then you get a text saying, I don't feel good tonight.
Can't make it tonight.
Yeah, Shadowheart says she has a headache. What? You know, just like what? Anyway, okay.
You have to reschedule for next week, guys.
Yeah. We'll hit the end. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server.
Sorry. I don't know if Richard opened the monster, and which I forget which Muppets movie it is, but Muppets in Space, I think, where they like sneak into some military base, and there's that Muppet that's like the weird,
it's just a bear.
The bearded like lobster guy.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But they're invisible and they walk past guards, and one of the guards is smoking, and the Muppet goes, "Smoking will kill you, man." And the guard turns to the other guard and goes, "I didn't know you cared." Anyway, monsters will kill you. Monsters the worst drink on the planet.
Yes.
Just drink straight vodka. It's probably healthier.
Gaming Discourse.
Shawn Layden spoke with GamesIndustry.biz on a range of topics. GamesIndustry.biz is doing a series on how games can be made cheaper, faster, and better. They're beginning it by speaking with Layden, who is the former, I don't remember the title. President of Sony Interactive Entertainment. Yeah. Layden spoke on 4 areas where the industry could improve. 1, make your games shorter. 2, new tech doesn't always get noticed, so is it worth the investment? 3, find ways to allow AI and other development tools to do heavy lifting. And 4, be disciplined and don't spend too much time on an idea if it's not working. There are some quotes here. I'm going to read them. They're a little short. If something I say that interests you guys, just jump in and interrupt me. But I'm just going to read them one at a time here. Quote, this is Shawn Layden again. Quote, "We live in a world where only 32% of gamers actually finish the game. So should we continue to build games that are unlikely for most of the people to even see the end of it? It costs to build to the end. You can tighten that up. If you make your games on a shorter timeline, that will reduce your cost. It'll get you to market faster. You can please your consumers sooner rather than always telling them to wait 45 years for your next opus. I think we have to re-examine how we present our games to the gaming public." On the technical side of development, he said, quote, "We've got to the point where you have advanced ray tracing, and most of the platforms can do 60 frames per second. Some can do 120, which your eye can't register anyway. I think we're at the edge of that universe now. We're in the realm of differences that only dogs can hear. And maybe that's not where the emphasis should be anymore. Let's go back to what can I do that would be amusing, entertaining, and interactive so that someone would want to spend their money and time and enjoy themselves in a way that means they get value for money. And we can continue to pay at least living wages or better to the people who make them games." On AI, Layden said, quote, "AI will be an assisting technology. Of course, you've got some large business consulting group claiming that by 2030, 50% of games will be written by AI. That is not going to happen. AI only sees in one direction, which is backwards. It's a great tool for taking a bunch of knowledge into a space and summarizing it in 4 paragraphs. It's really good at that. I think we'll see it doing more first draft work. Some of the video AI kits that are out there means you can mock up a scene pretty fast to get an idea of whether something looks interesting. So in that ideation phase, it can help speed things up, but I don't see it writing games anytime soon." Okay, so there's a couple meat sandwiches there. I'll let you guys bounce around.
Some banh mi's.
Real quick, I'm surprised no studio has thought of doing this yet, but develop a large game and then sell it in, like, not sell it in parts, but like do like Red Dead 1 or Red Dead 2 part 1, part 2, part 3, then you sell them at like $30-$40 a piece, and now your $60 game is now $90 to $120, and you've made all that money back threefold. It's a terrible idea. I hope no one actually does it.
I think
no
Square
one's done
Enix
it so far.
tried. I think because that's kind of sounds like what Square Enix did with Hitman by selling it in episodic forms.
I guess like episodic titles like fucking Telltale Games kind of did that, but not to the degree of like AAA titles doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting idea, but I think not to poo-poo it because I know you're just spitballing, but like I think you'd have to think about
when a game releases, it's a big deal for like that quarter, that fiscal quarter. So when GTA 6 releases, that's going to be a massive deal, not just for that quarter for Take-Two, but for the entire fiscal year. But
and then they're going to milk out online for the next 2 million years.
And so if you were to split that into like multiple fiscal quarters, I don't know what would happen if you had to delay one to the next fiscal year or whatever.
Right.
And then you're getting 2 bumps in 2 different areas when you could have had that one bump centralized. So I don't know if logistically that would work. But like, I don't think it's necessarily like a horrific idea. I just don't. It seems.
Oh no, it is nightmare. It is
Okay.
It is a nightmare if that's the way the industry ends up going. And I would feel terrible if I was the spark for it. But the other point I wanted to bring up was I disagree that his statement is he doesn't believe that by 2030 50% of games will be written by AI. I do believe that, but I believe that 50% is just going to be shovelware. It's just going to be schlock just thrown out onto the Steam page, but it's going to account for 50% of games released.
Yeah, there is that discussion as well, because it's like, I guess it depends on how you're approaching your use to AI. I would 100% believe that companies like Electronic Arts or Take-Two would love to replace workers with AI.
Would.
Yeah.
So if they could find a way, you know, especially franchises like Madden, right? I think Madden is the type of or Call of Duty franchises with big casual audiences that are really sold on like name recognition and just habitually played and spent money and purchased. I think franchises like that are maybe where AI, for lesser ethical companies, AI could be taken advantage of because those are less discerning audiences, right? And it's the same thing with microtransactions. Sports games are so bad right now because they've been able to just wreak havoc when it comes to their live service economies, and it's because the audiences are more casual. They don't react to that kind of stuff the same way that I think more core audiences do.
Right.
So you can get away with more. You can get away with lesser products, less effort, because you have larger audiences that aren't as discerning, which is fine. And so it's like if someone's playing a game casually, there's nothing unethical, bad, or wrong about that. But there is something wrong with taking advantage of that, I think. And I think that's, yeah, you're correct. And if you care about the integrity of your game, of the art, of the industry, yeah, AI has its limitations clearly, and you shouldn't be using it, at least to the extent that you're replacing creators. But if you're someone like Andrew Wilson, you don't give a shit about any of that. So it's like, yeah, figure out a way to do it.
And AI is going to inevitably make its way into the creative spaces for video games. It's been in the music industry. AI in like a more amorphous, nebulous sense has been in the music industry since the 90s. There have been software and everything that is commonplace that takes a lot of the load off of the engineer. People will think of like autotune. Autotune can be fully automated. You tell it what pitch it's going to be in, and then it does everything for you. There are softwares you can use that will give you a pre-mix of your equalizer graph to, like, you say, I want it to sound like this song. You play a song, you say, I want it to sound like this. It analyzes it, and it maps out where your peaks and valleys are going to be for your EQ graph. And then you can manipulate it from there or tell it how exact to that sound you want it to be. So if you want 100% of that, it'll do down to the individual frequencies up and down on the EQ graph. And so it's already there in other industries of the entertainment side of, you know, the economy. So it's going to get into more commonplace in the video game industry sooner rather than later. It's already there, and it's going to become more prevalent, and it falls down to whether or not it becomes a tool or a crutch. And hopefully it falls down the path of becoming a tool that people use rather than a crutch that everyone relies on.
Yeah, and then I think maybe something similar is like asset flipping and stuff like that got really big over the past decade. with AI, you can't. I don't think there's an AI out there that can create. Well, there is that can create in-game assets, but I don't think it's good enough to like use right now. But when you talk about writing or image, like I told you guys last week about a game I played during the Steam Next Fest, and I was in a bedroom and looked on the walls, and those dogs are AI generated dogs. Yep. So it's like right off the bat. And if I were that game developer and and it was a small game dev, and the game dev said, well, I'm a small dev, I don't have money or time. I'd rather you just have bare walls. Don't put anything there, because as soon as I see an image that's clearly AI generated, it's worse than just having bare walls there. And it makes me wonder, okay, what else am I looking at? What now? Yes. Now I'm suspicious about things.
More critical eye.
Yep. Than just being able to like enjoy it.
Alternatively, get one piece of art commissioned and then just flip it, go through monochrome, different settings on it.
Yes,
turn that one piece into multiple pieces.
And I am someone that will look at paintings in video games because I often think they're actually kind of interesting. Baldur's Gate 3 has a lot of interesting paintings. So it also makes me think that those things don't matter to you. So it's like if it doesn't matter so much that you just want to generate an image and put it there because you just want something there, don't have anything there. But that's sort of a more different discussion. Richard, did you have anything you wanted to latch on here?
Everything that Layden has been saying is stuff that we've already regurgitated several times in the last couple months. It's just that it's great that it's coming
listening
from...
to our show, always.
Yes, exactly. It's great coming from somebody who I would like to say has some pull in the industry, but we don't know that anymore since he doesn't really belong to anyone. But yeah, I did bring up the fact that that like Square Enix recently did say that they used AI in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to help with the lip syncing for the different languages, which to me, great. That's actually a very cool way to use it. When we talked about asset flipping, there was actually something when somebody was playing the Alan Wake remaster recently, and they found that the shrubs in Alan Wake remaster were just the normal rendered trees just shrunken down. And so like some people were mad, but others were just like, no, that's really awesome. That saves time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you did want to create a like horror based game that's set in the forest, hey AI, can you create this like dense-ish forest with whatever, I'm sure that would cut down a lot of work for these folks. But the way that Shawn Layden is explaining how you would use AI seems way better functionally than what we are being told it should be used for online.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But there was also that Ubisoft demo where it was like, we're going to have NPCs that you can have full conversations with.
Right.
And it was like, you're solving a problem that does not exist.
Right.
No game needs this. You can have a curated set of lines. It's fine.
Who is this for?
Exactly. But the people that are creating it are, again, solving a problem that does not exist. They are invested in the sector, so they have to create something. A couple of years ago, they created a thing called NFTs. This is how you can spend your Web3 cash. So I think AI is similar. His Layden's quote on game length is interesting. Again, something we've discussed for years on this show. All these things have been true for a long time.
Yeah, very long time.
Going back before our show, going back decades perhaps.
The dawn of gaming.
Yeah, but I do think that game length is I think a complex discussion, because it all comes down to, I think, budget and what you're able to do, and then the details of that length. Baldur's Gate 3 is extremely long. My first playthrough took me 200 hours, and it was detailed.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's detailed. It was 200 hours, but it felt like I was never repeating myself. It was constantly fresh, constantly new dialogue, new story, always interesting, right? So from even though it was a long game, it never felt like I was dragging or slogging, right? And that Larian did that really well. Contrast that to something like Rise of the Ronin, where that is not the case with Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin is really long, and there are a bunch of missions where you go to a place, you talk to a person, you kill a bunch of bad guys, That's the mission.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of that does not need to exist. And maybe it exists because they I don't know, they focus test it and people say, I want more content. So they make a bunch of repetitive levels and stuff like that. And that's the kind of length that needs to be cut
Wary
down.
of, yeah.
So it's like people will toss out length sometimes, but I do think there's a discussion to be had there, because if a game is 100 hours, that is not a bad thing in a vacuum. Like, you need to explain to me why it is 100 hours. If it's super repetitive, then yeah, like those 100 hours they don't need to exist. You can accordion that down. Red Dead Redemption 2 got way too long at the end. And an epilogue, and it was like, I don't need to go into the forest to shoot another gang of bad guys. Like, yeah. I get it. Figure out a different way to tell that piece of the story. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, because I feel like sometimes people talk about game length as if it's simple. Game shouldn't be long, but I don't think it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, earlier, I mean, obviously talked about Crow Country earlier, and when I mentioned that it was short, that wasn't like a slight towards the game.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't think it ever should be. I've always been in the belief that your opinion on the game should be measured by your enjoyment of it. And I enjoyed Crow Country, and I enjoyed the time that I played with it. If I want to go back, I'm sure I can stretch that time to, 10, 12 hours. Much like another game that was, well, I call it a game, but depending on who you talk to, it's not. Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. Ground Zeroes was our one mission, essentially. You had kind of an open area, but I spent almost 20 hours on that game, because what is in the game is enough to keep you interested, to keep you staying there. So, whereas, yes, Last of Us 2 is another good example of something that's bogged down by length. Red Dead Redemption 2 is another game that is that as well. We have to figure out a way to get rid of the fluff, essentially. I know we want to keep player engagement, but as I've said before, gamers know that there's always something better like coming up, So,
and I don't think longer game times lead to higher sales or anything like that.
Titanfall 2, one of the shortest games I've ever played, and it's also one of the best.
Yep, and there's all kinds of ways, alternate. I kind of miss alternate modes. Little side modes. In Splinter Cell Conviction, there's deniable ops, where it's just these missions. Yeah. Resident Evil, you had the Mercenaries mode. You had these alternate modes where you could go play, where it was just levels that you could just, and it was just gameplay. There was no like narrative or story really that linked it all together. I don't know. It feels like games don't have that as much anymore. Maybe they do, but doesn't feel like it to me.
No.
So maybe that's something that needs to come back. Content that is recyclable, that you can do on the side, and it doesn't have to be part of like a narrative or something that is told linearly or something like that. The thing with visuals, I want to touch on this real quick. It's correct. Again, a conversation we've had for a long time. Art direction is important, and water doesn't need to be super good. Rocks don't need to be incredible. We can figure out a way to make games, and I feel like that are... I feel like a lot of the emphasis on visuals is an overestimation, and people are fine with games that don't look all that great. And I think you can look at games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom.
I would say content warning and I forgot the other one.
Yeah, content warning and
the other multiplayer company.
Dead Company. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, Lethal Company.
Lethal Company.
Yes, where it's the art direction, it's the style, it's not necessarily the fidelity. That's been true for a long time as well. And I could go on naming the System Shock remake. Rave reviews. It is not. It's got tiny little voxels everywhere. It's kind of stylized. Really? Yeah, it's a really neat visual. But it's not it's not necessarily like a realistic quote unquote looking game. So that's correct. A few more Layden quotes here on other areas in the games in the games industry. Quote, that's the real frustrating thing. This is on recent layoffs in the games industry. I'm sorry. Quote, that's the real frustrating thing when you see people say, look, here's a small studio that made a great game. It has true promise. It created an entirely new gaming experience, but we don't have the patience to play this thing out into part 2 or part 3. Even though they didn't really get wiped out by it, they didn't have the windfall profits they expected, and so they just kill this thing and go for more established AAA IP sequels, copycats, and other things. From a financial perspective, you can draw a through line and say, if we build this, it'll likely perform like this in the market. When you bring completely new things that have that people have not seen before, which may be fantastic and quite often are, the publishing industry doesn't have patience now to nurture these things, and they feel they need the quick, big win. And that's a terrible place to be in an entertainment and creative industry. Another quote here, quote, when we went through this time of artificial growth during the pandemic, and I would have expected more companies to recognize that this is a very limited time party, but people got excited in the moment. They didn't want to miss the opportunity, and so you bulk up. None of us knew how long the pandemic was going to last or lockdown was going to last. So I guess you do make investments and try to jump on the potential that they may be longer than it turned out to be. But that's a huge gamble. You're betting on the comet, and if it doesn't happen, then you're stuck out of position with a huge labor load. It's human nature, right? If you're at the craps table, and someone's got the hot hand and they're running the table, you just want to jump on that train and get a piece of that before it goes. That's why patience is the thing that's important. The industry is losing patience. We need to find a way to solve this problem in 6 months in an industry where nothing gets done in 6 months, end quote. Okay, so again, stuff that we've talked a lot previously, and yeah, it's nice to hear someone that was in the position of like a Jim Ryan or Phil Spencer say that, they should have known the pandemic bubble was a pandemic bubble and maybe shouldn't have done a lot of the stuff that instigated these layoffs in the first place. Now, and maybe this is cynical, but what I would posit is that a lot of those decisions were made that the bubble would pop. But who cares? Yeah. You're not going to lose your job.
Right.
You'll cut a couple hundred artists in this studio over here, and you'll divest this studio, and you'll shut down that publisher. You'll shut down Private Division, and you'll get rid of Tango. Who cares? Because I'm not losing my job. And then we'll grow in the next quarter because we have a smaller team of people that we have to pay, and I'm a genius. I feel like that probably happened as well. And I'm also sure that they were like, oh my God, everyone's playing video games and this is how it's going to be for the rest of our lives. So invest.
Yeah.
Without any thought that the pandemic changed the way games were played.
Yeah. Obviously people needed something to do. And as soon as they stopped staying at home, then the games went away. And once again, hitting the nail on the head with what Layden's quotes are saying here, and there's honestly nothing to really add to this because
I will say that seems like he's taking a shot at Xbox there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're about to take a lot of shots soon, but
we're gonna be taking shots at Xbox.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think he has the freedom to take shots at a lot of people. But I mean, there's really, out of the big three, you can only take big shots at one for the most part, which is Microsoft. Sony, yeah, I mean, you can criticize on some things that they do, but they're by and large fine. But yeah, no, Xbox is really dropped the ball. Oh God.
Yep, and yeah, I would agree. We do need to figure out a way where, I don't know, that gets into risk management, that gets into risk aversion, right?
Yeah.
Is how publishers are so risk averse for a bunch of stupid reasons, and it's really annoying. And yeah, and I think there's ample evidence that that's just not the case. I think one thing Baldur's Gate 3 has shown is how many people will play an in-depth, complicated CRPG if it's really good.
Yeah.
Now, it's not easy to make a really good game, but that shows that there is a market for that. You don't have to be afraid of giving people complex games. And it's accessible. You can turn the difficulty down, and you can go through and schwack all the enemies, and you're fine.
Yeah.
In Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
So there is that, but like again, it's also there's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
It takes forever, so it's like there is a market for complex, thick games.
Yes.
That I think a lot of people just don't want to ignore because they're not as lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is annoying.
Yeah, the gaming audience is not as stupid as we're led to believe from the big companies here.
yes, I would agree. Yeah, like I don't know. A lot of the reaction to Star Wars Outlaws was it's a Ubisoft game,
Yeah.
and that's really too bad because it doesn't have to be.
No.
You can be creative and make something different. You can have like it doesn't mean every game has to be completely original. But you can do things a little different. You know, I think I'm not a huge fan of the Souls structure, but like the Jedi Survivor and the Jedi games, they tried something different. It was kind of awkward here and there, but I think at the end of the day, I really appreciate it because it's a version of Star Wars and it's a type of game that I don't know that I think works pretty well. So it's like, yeah, you could try. Other genres will sell, whatever. Connor, is there anything you wanted to say before we move on here?
Well, just, people don't want single-player cowboy games.
That's correct.
No, absolutely.
That's the main takeaway from this podcast.
How dare you?
Yeah, the main takeaway from this podcast, everybody. Never ever play Red Dead Redemption. Okay, Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Yes.
Hidetaka Miyazaki did a wide-ranging interview with Keza McDonald at The Guardian. They spoke about From Software's history, difficulty in From Software games, and more. I'm going to read a couple quotes here. Quote, Elden Ring was in a league of its own in terms of the success and critical acclaim that it has seen. But what we try to do as a company is never assume that will happen again with our future games. No decision is based on that assumption. Hey, we did it once, it's going to happen again. Allowing for this rather conservative forecast gives us room to fail, and in turn results in better games and better decisions. On difficulty, quote, if we really wanted the whole world to play the game, we would just crank the difficulty down. But that wasn't the right approach. Had we taken that approach, I don't think the game would have done what it did. Because the sense of achievement that players gain from overcoming these hurdles is such a fundamental part of the experience. Turning down difficulty would strip the game of that joy, which, in my eyes, would break the game itself, end quote, which is, I think, how we always imagined their thought process was. So he kind of just laid it out there. Thoughts on these quotes?
I made this comparison before, specifically with the Souls-like games, and although I've made fun of it a couple times. I know we got something coming up. I take a shot at them, but about accessibility and a lot of people playing. There doesn't necessarily, not everything has to be for everyone. And with the comparison I made was basically something like, no matter how critically acclaimed the film The Fall is, not everybody's going to see it. It's not for everybody. I think games should be treated in some sort of way. So I think that the Souls games can stand on its own as something that would only be for those who are truly interested in getting into it. And then if they want something more accessible, we do have inspirations like Stellar Blade, like Jedi Survivor, Steel Rising, Lies of P, all of those games. But I understand if somebody wants to play like those games, it's a little difficult, but those are the way they are. And we didn't make them. From Software did. So they get to choose how it is.
Yeah, the thought I've always had is I think that's fine. I think you make the game the way you want to make it, and Elden Ring and Souls games are not purely single player games. There is a multiplayer element, but I do think they are a large part. They are mostly a single player experience. So the question then becomes, okay, well, why not have easy option? Why not have more accessibility options?
Right.
And there could be answers there. There could be, it's a budgetary thing. It's a time thing. We want to do accessibility. That means we have to have a team that does that. That means we're going to have to allocate time. We're going to have to set goals. So that's a whole nother pipeline you have to add into your development process if you're doing something like that. That could be true. Same thing with difficulty options, maybe. If you decide to have an easy mode, it's like, what does that impact? How does that impact multiplayer? How are you going to implement that? But at the same time, I think that would be the question. The response I would have is, okay, but why not optional? Why not? Again, Baldur's Gate 3, you can make it incredibly difficult and you can make it incredibly easy. And whatever mode you play it on, Richard, it's not going to impact me. So what does it matter? The difficulty discussion gets bogged down because people have it on Twitter, and you shouldn't talk on Twitter because nothing gets done there besides white supremacy nowadays. So it's like, I feel like that's a really reasonable question to ask, and I'm not sure if there is a good artistic response, unless it is just, well, because this is the only way we envision our game. It's like, oh, okay, I guess, I don't know. It's easier for that discussion is easier in a multiplayer context, because for squad to exist, it has to be difficult, and you have to, because the idea is it's a milsim, it's a multiplayer milsim. So if you were to make a mode that was a lot easier and stuff like that, it could split the player base and it would make it a completely different game. But that's a multiplayer game where everyone's playing together on a similar battleground, as opposed to Elden Ring, where two people can play the game and they're never going to encounter each other because it's a single player title. So yeah, that would be the thing that I would question. It was a really interesting interview altogether. And it makes you glad that From Software has succeeded for as long as it has. And apparently Elden Ring, the Shadow of the Erd Tree or whatever it's called, is it for Elden Ring. They're not doing a sequel for now. So whatever they're doing next, I'm really excited for. But yeah, Connor, was there anything you wanted to say about this?
Just wanted to address your stance on the difficulty question. You wouldn't ask like the Wu-Tang Clan why they don't make country music, right? It's because that's not what they want to do. They want to make From Software wants to make a challenging game.
Yeah, and I think
so. If people, and that's where the conversation needs to end. They don't want to do that, so they're not going to. And if people have an issue with that, go find a game that's going to be like Souls or like Elden Ring, but has a difficulty slider.
Yeah, I guess I would hear the people out that would want an easy mode there. Then not to say that you wouldn't or anything like that. I'm just saying, me personally, hear that out.
Oh no, I won't.
Okay.
No, if people actually have an issue with From Software not making their games more accessible, there's other companies out there that make more accessible games. Go play those ones.
And I also
not everything is for everyone. You wouldn't ask any other entertainment industry why they don't do their things differently. You might, but it's never going to be taken seriously.
Yeah, but I would also say that games are different. It's not a 1-1 comparison. Music, movies, whatever.
Right.
So I understand going to Robert Eggers and saying, hey, can you make The Witch less scary so I can watch it? No, he made the movie he wants to make, and I'm not going to be able to watch it because it's too scary. But
I'm pulling it down to what the artist wants to do. Yeah, and that translates across every medium.
Okay, well, I would disagree. Because I think video games are a different medium, and if adding a difficulty mode or a difficulty option is easy, then I just want to hear a more thorough explanation. That's all. You can say your piece, and then we can move on.
Well, again, their answer is, and I'm not saying that this is their answer, but their answer of being, we want to make difficult games, we want to make the games this way. That is the answer, and there doesn't need to be a more in-depth, well, what about doing this or this or this? No. They want to make the games this way, so they're going to make the games that way.
Okay, that's fine.
You're stupid. Just kidding. All right, moving on to someone who is stupid. A variety interview with Matt Booty, who is Xbox president of gaming content and studios. Spoke with I forget the. Let me look this up real quick. She's the new TV and video game writer, Jennifer Moss, at Variety on their. Hold on. What's the name of this podcast again?
Holy crap!
It was a podcast, strictly business podcast, which makes this all the more tasteless. Maybe I don't know. Booty spoke about a lot of different things with Xbox, the recent showcases and stuff, but with regards to the Tango software closing, said, quote, I won't get into the real sort of nitty-gritty details on what went into the decision, mostly out of respect for the people there. I think the thing to be considered is that for us, it's as much a forward-looking situation as much as it is looking back at one certain game. There are a lot of things that go into success for a game. What leadership do you have? What creative leadership do you have? Is the team the same team that shipped something successful previously? And while there have been factors and situations that previously led to success, they may not all still be in place as you look at what you're doing going forward. That is difficult to read. Remember, Tango CEO and founder Shinji Mikami left in February 2023.
I thought he left like way before that.
Was it even before that?
No, I feel like he's been gone forever. I feel like he was gone like 2 years after it got
really
announced. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was before then. That was the date I saw.
I don't know.
Who knows? It was before this year. He's been gone at least 12 months. There, we'll say that. So if he has been gone even longer than that,
I guess he left last year. I thought he left way longer than that, but
yeah, I don't know. I really hated this because it's like there's no, I don't know. There's no. Well, can't you understand why everybody's so mad?
Yeah.
I don't know. How about a little? It's just Xbox has not given a clear answer for any of this. Mm-mm. This is clearer than Sarah Bond's answer,
sure,
but like it's still not a good one. And I understand that he says, out of respect to the people, he doesn't want to discuss it. And it's like, well, okay, but it infuriated a lot of people, including Xbox employees. Is there any sadness? Is there any we regret to do this, but we have to do it? I don't know. It's just Xbox has been so evasive and vague about this, and it's really frustrating. It doesn't make sense. And it's in a podcast called Strictly Business. It's like,
yeah,
come on.
I think it's pretty ridiculous, and you can already poke holes in what Matt is saying when you look at the quote. What creative leadership do you have? Is the team the same team that shipped something successfully previously? And while there have been factors and situations that previously led to success, it may not all be still in place. Blah blah blah. If I'm not mistaken, aside from one game, every single Tango game has been a success. Evil Within 1, Evil Within 2, Ghostwire, and Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, which everyone says was a success.
Yes.
Yeah.
Their fifth game is arguable if it was a success or not, because it was an Apple Arcade exclusive. It was called Guilt.
Oh.
And it was about you're a girl going to her school, and it gets she goes into another dimension, and it's like a horror game.
That was going to be a Stadia game, wasn't it?
Or Stadia. I'm sorry, Stadia game.
Yeah, that was going to be one of the Stadia exclusives.
It was a Stadia exclusive. Sorry, but it's on PC now, and it's on. But unfortunately, it was swept under the rug because it was kind of like a re-release thing. It's arguable if that was a success or not. Matt Booty is speaking as if well, we don't know if it's going to be if they're going to continue making successful games when they already have a track record
yes.
of 4 out of 5 titles that did fairly well and have all been successful either commercially or critically. And I don't know what they want from their studios, and I don't like that he's kind of insinuating the fact that Shinji leaving is the reason why they closed it down either. That seems weird. When I'm sure everyone who is a leader of their respective studio probably has a protege of some sort.
Yeah.
And because that's how that works.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and also we have this discussion all the time about, I don't know, it's tough to tell what a studio loses when somebody leaves.
Yes, always.
Because you're not there. So what happened to BioWare when Mark Darrah left? We don't know. Obviously, they lost someone extremely experienced and extremely valuable.
Right.
But does that mean the ship is going to sink? I don't know.
Who knows?
You know, Empire Strikes Back wasn't directed by George Lucas. That's why it's the best movie in the series. But like, so we don't know what happens when other people take leadership roles, when other people leave or whatever. It's tough to tell. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know. Just say it. Just say the word, Xbox. Like, if you're saying we had to shut down because they didn't have leadership, just say it. Grab the bull by the horns and fucking say it. Quit dancing around the bush, tiptoeing around the bush, whatever the phrase is. Quit like giving these vague answers. Just say it. Say, we wanted to impress our investors, so we slashed a bunch of jobs so we could create quote unquote growth. Fuck you, subscribe to Game Pass. Just say that, because it's so infuriating that so many people lost their jobs, that a clearly successful studio doesn't exist, and we get these like passive aggressive answers, like they're annoyed at having to answer these questions.
Yeah.
So annoying.
That they created in the first place.
They created it in the first place. Yeah. So, and there's not a single, like, listen, I understand people's frustration. I understand their anger. There's not a single, like, there's no tact at all.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I got to run a business, okay? It's like, really, Phil? Anyway, anything else we want to say about this before we get out of here?
No.
Before we do tidbits.
Xbox is, you're fucking up.
What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits.
You know, Xbox is. I'm kidding.
You know, folks, let me tell you about a little Microsoft division called Xbox.
Funny enough, that was the name of their camera, the Xbox Vision camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
Hey.
It was a little thing. It's Uno and penises. They go together like, I don't know, peanut butter and jelly, I guess. Nintendo is being annoying, and they will not let us know who developed their games. Mario and Luigi Brothership was recently announced 9 years after their last game. And in that time, the original developer of the entire Mario and Luigi series, Alpha Dream, closed due to bankruptcy. The new game, Brothership, has the same art style and gameplay as the original games, which led people to believe that Alpha Dream is back in some way or form. Nintendo has confirmed that, quote, some of the original developers who worked on the franchise are involved in the development of Mario and Luigi Brothership. For more information about the developers, please stay tuned to the game's credits at release.
I don't get it. I don't know.
I don't get it either.
This industry has had a long history of not wanting to just tell you who made it, pay who made it. It has this issue.
Yeah.
I don't get it. This is Nintendo, so they have their own weird kinks that, you know, they get all wrapped up on for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. But if I don't know, you know, if I feel like if the industry wanted to make things easier on themselves, they could stop pretending that they're the KGB and CIA at the height of the Cold War when it comes to fucking secrets, right? Like, there's so much that's obfuscated, secretive in the games industry, and that creates vacuums where people start to leak shit and people get bad news, and there's Reddits and Discords dedicated to dudes pretending to be Japanese women to get clout and leak things and shit like that. And it's like, you know, you could cut a lot of that away if you
I'm very surprised you heard about that, by the way. I'm very surprised that news got to you.
Is it a tidbit?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not.
That's a deep cut.
It's a very deep cut.
But it's like you could cut a lot of that shit away if you just... And this information is not... We're not asking you for the source code to Tears of the Kingdom. We're asking you who made your game. What is the issue there? It's... I don't know. This industry is just... So often... I think about Rod Gilbert. He's the guy that made Return to Monkey Island, right?
Ron Gilbert.
Yeah. He has a blog post, and I remember reading it once, And there was this sentence that made me really sad, because the sentence was just, I've spent so much of my career making money for other people. And it's just like, damn. One of the more beloved adventure games of all time, legendary, a very famous game developer. And it's like, imagine if, I don't know, I guess this has happened in a lot of, imagine if a singer, it's like, yeah, I'm sure that has happened in the past. But it's like, that's not the way it should be. Fuck executives, and we need to wait for creatives to get money and stuff. And okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
That's okay. This one hit yesterday, but a lot of people have heard about it, or you probably have too. A new report claims that Sony is working on native backwards compatibility for PS3. Supposedly credible insider Special Nick, who alleged on the latest episode of Xbox Era podcast that Sony is reportedly planning to make PS3 games natively playable on PS5. The leaker's sources apparently told him that they are working on select PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility for PS5. And then he was asked about possible like FPS boost. He stated that he didn't get any more details than that. He has no idea. All he heard is that Sony is working on selective PS3 backwards compatibility.
That seems interesting that it would be a software thing.
It'd probably be an emulation of some sort. It's.
So would that would work then? How would that work? Because I don't know.
I won't go into the nitty gritty, but go ahead and ask me, and I will.
Yeah, because obviously, relative to me, you have expert knowledge. I don't know if you would consider yourself an expert when it comes to the tech behind emulation, but like if I have a disc, let's say Heavy Rain, PS3 era game. So I have Heavy Rain hard copy, right? If there was some kind of software update on my PS5 that told me if I put a Heavy Rain disc into my PS5, it will read it and emulate it.
Yeah.
Is that how the tech works?
That's how that probably would work. Yeah. So we have
and we just say it would just register the disc, and then it would get the game from somewhere else.
Much like Xbox kind of.
Like I'd have to download it or something.
Yeah. Either download it or it will just emulate it, because the PS3, the PlayStation 3 console, the original version that was backwards compatible. There's two different models, and people come in and fight over all this. So there was one model, the original.
You sounded so exhausted. I'm sorry.
I do, because it doesn't fucking matter. So the very first model of PlayStation 3, I'm being very reductive when I say this. It essentially literally had a PS2 inside of it. So it was a PS3, had a PS3, but it also had a PS2 inside of it. If you put a PS2 disc in, that's how it reads. So it is functionally a PS2. They took that out eventually, and you were able to play PS2 games still on other models. But after that, it was emulated. It wasn't hardware based. And that's a big difference. Like, I don't know if you know, but you're playing a completely different game at that point, buddy. That's worth the whole other $50 you got to pay. Anyways, so what this would do is essentially the PS5 is a very high-end PC. There's an emulator out there. I forgot exactly, the RCSP3 or something. That's the name of the PS3 emulator. It's making a lot of headway as far as the compatibility of which games it can play and which games it can't. I'm sure Sony already has a leg up on figuring that out. So I'm sure that if you do play a game on a PS5 from a PS3 disc, it will be emulated. I'm sure that would be the easiest way to go about it. And there was a couple of articles I read about it. I think I heard something about it would require internet connection also, because there's the slight possibility of it being supplemented by cloud technology.
Interesting.
Like, it would use the disc, but to help emulate it, it might use cloud technology. But I don't know how that would work. I'm sure I'm just pulling crap out of my ass, but whatever. Great. Awesome. But I also feel weird about it, if this is true, because I told my friends this was months ago, I got a PS3. I was like, I'm going to mod my PS3. That way I can just download whatever game I want. I told him, I'm on my PS3, it's great, it's awesome. And my buddy was like, what games are you going to play on it? And I was like, Because a large majority of those games you would play on PS3 have already been ported.
Or they have HD remakes.
Or they have HD remakes.
Yeah.
And they're cheap enough nowadays to just play. Metal Gear Solid 4. It's the only game I can think of.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, did Heavy Rain have a... I don't know if
two times.
Okay,
PS4 and PS5.
That. Yeah, because all the other Metal Gears did. All the Uncharted's had remakes. Obviously, Last of Us had a remake. I'm trying to think of other... Starhawk. What about... Did Starhawk get a...
Starhawk did not, but I don't know if it's important enough to get a selective PS3 backwards. Sly trilogy, maybe. Ratchet and Clank trilogy. Jak and Daxter trilogy, possibly.
Yeah, and then obviously...
Infamous 1 and 2.
That's a good one. There you go. Yeah. Infamous 1 and 2. Because those have been...
Heavenly Sword.
Infamous, and then what about that Prototype?
That did get an HD remake actually on PS4 and Xbox One.
It did?
Yep, it got a bundle. It got a double bundle.
And that wasn't a PS3 exclusive. No, the Infamous games are probably the best ones. Yeah. We have completely forgot about that for that IP, Infamous.
Unfortunately, Sucker Punch is working on more important things right now.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed Infamous 1 and 2.
They're good. They're very good.
Yeah. That was a...
And they also had an era of like kooky side story games.
Like what?
Like what if Cole became a vampire?
Oh, so yeah, that's right.
Festival of Blood. And like...
That's right. I forgot about that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Man, it's weird to think about how there were entire video game IPs that no longer, like, exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Killzone, the entire Killzone series.
Yeah, and there was an HD remake of Killzone, too. Of the Killzone games.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, sure, I'm being a bit facetious when I'm like, what games would you play on PC? But it's like, yeah, there is a handful, but it's like, is it really enough to, like, go through all the trouble of, like...
I'll amend that. There was an HD remaster, remake, whatever, of Killzone 1 and 2, but that was for the PS3 and 3.
Correct.
So I don't think there's been anything since then. So that would be games that would be backwards compatible then.
Yeah.
And Shadowfall was obviously a launch title for the PS, or close to a launch title for the PS4. So, yeah, man, I played all those games. Barely remember. Resistance. There's another one. I played that with Connor. Connor hated it because it was like PlayStation's Halo. It's kind of, you know, set at World War II. I love that concept.
I love all that, man. It is a good concept. I don't know. Something just never clicked with it. I kept trying. I tried 1. I tried 2. I didn't try 3 though.
Well, there's your backwards compatibility. Get it for Resistance, baby.
All 5 games, baby.
I don't even know how many there are.
But that's the thing. Like, if they wanted to make other games backwards compatibility, I'm sure there would be arguments regarding licensing. Like, are they really going to go to EA and be like, "Hey, can we license Need for Speed Carbon to be played on a PS3?" It's like, no, who cares? And that's the bad thing about backwards.
EA might want to make more money off of that game.
So that's the point I was going to make. Like, I would be like, yeah, they might want to make more, but the only way they would make more is if they put it digitally on the store. And at that point, what is it going to be, $39.99? Like, get out of here! Like,
yeah. Huh. That would be interesting. I'm sure Xbox has had similar conversations, but even then, Xbox is doing it at a time when Xbox with the Xbox One started their backwards compatibility push. I don't know. I feel like earlier, and it was with older games, and I don't know if...
Well, and most of the list from 360 went with it.
And a lot of those games, weren't available digitally, I don't think. Games like Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow, I don't think were available. A lot of old Star Wars games, Star Wars Obi-Wan or whatever, which I don't know if that was part of Xbox's.
They're all Star Wars games are backwards compatible.
Yeah, so. But I don't think that Star Wars Obi-Wan ever got a PC release. I think it was an Xbox exclusive.
Which one?
Just
Obi-Wan?
Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
One I still have not yet played, but I've always wanted to. Okay, do you have any more?
Nope, I'm good.
Alrighty. YouTube.com/TheGamingDiscourse, Patreon.com/TheGamingDiscourse. We've got more stuff coming. Check us out. Subscribe. Assault and battery the like button. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.